This is not a news outlet. We're not here to do political commentary, but we are here to help you understand better what's happening out there from an Islamic perspective. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Battle of Narratives. We're here with Sheikh Miqdad and Sheikh Asad and with a live audience as well. Assalamu alaikum everybody. So the first thing is, I notice you guys are wearing black, and that shows that you're really invested in what's happening because it's not Muharram, it's not Safar. So let's start with this. Why is this so important for us over here? And then we'll talk about why it's important for people out there, inshallah.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So the reason why I'm wearing black, because today the entire nation where we are is mourning. Everybody is grieved about what happened to the leader. And I think being around here, you feel that the walls are black, there's a movement happening, the country is under attack. So you feel part of it naturally being over here. And that's why we're wearing black.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I'd like to begin by offering my condolences to all of you and the Imam of our time on the martyrdom of the leader. I think that is self-explanatory, as Sheikh Miqdad also mentioned. We're wearing black because we're mourning. This is not a normal incident that has occurred. This is, on the one hand, you have a marja of the Shia world who has been martyred. On the other hand, a leader of the free world as well, somebody who stood up against dhulm and oppression. And this is something that should definitely affect all of us.
So this is really interesting because when this happened and Ayatollah Khamenei was shaheed on the first day of the war, I was in Tabligh and I was abroad, and a lot of people came and to offer their condolences to me. Shia brothers and sisters offering their condolences to me. Me, why? Because I'm from Qom, I study in Qom, and so they felt that this is something that touched me a lot. And what I felt strange was that they didn't feel the same sorrow and pain in the same way, and they were coming to me as if this is something to do with me. So I think,
let's make it clear, you're not Iranian.
And I'm not Iranian. None of us over here are Iranian. It's true, we are living in Qom, we're students of the Hawza. But one thing that really stands out is that this feels like this is something that's related to those who are either Iranian or living in Iran. And I think this is one of the first questions and one of the main questions we want to answer today is, why should all of this be relevant to people who are sitting outside?
So I think before we answer the question, I think it'd be nice to see what happened really. Can you just go through what happened on that day when you, because you were outside, I was outside as well, in Tabligh. How did it come to you?
Yeah.
Where were you? What was going on? I think it's a nice personal incident.
So it was really interesting because when I got the news, on the day when the attack happened, where officially the actual death was officially declared the next day, if I'm not mistaken. Well, we got the news from other channels that there is possibly this death, and in the beginning, like, it was denial. It's like, this has not happened.
We're telling people like, no, we don't.
We're telling the people this is, fake news. This hasn't happened. You're not ready to believe this, especially out of the blue. You weren't expecting this. We were hearing the drums of war, but we didn't really think that something like this was going to happen, something like this major. And people were concerned naturally because, as you said, it's one of our marajis. It's Iran. It's our land as Shias. So people were concerned. They kept asking about it, and in the beginning were like, this hasn't happened. The next day when the news was actually announced, for me it was like again, it was denial, but I just went silent. I went silent and I just went in my thought and I just moved away. It was like, I first couldn't believe this happened, it could happen. I couldn't believe that, how did they manage to do that? Why would that even happen? The beginning was a bit of
frustration, anger?
No, in the beginning was literally no feeling. I went blank. I didn't speak emotionally, I was blank. I just walked away and I started pacing. And I remember people were just looking at me and I was like, I just blanked out everything. I was just pacing and just trying to think, trying to make sense of what's happening. But just, in the beginning it was like that. It's later on that it started to hit me. And I started to, feel something about it.
You were here, right?
I was here, yeah. So I remember it was interesting because both of you are outside for Tabligh. For me, it was Saturday morning when the war began, and I was supposed to fly out the next day on Sunday. And I remember one of the brothers here had offered to drop me to the airport, and when the war broke out, I woke up in the morning to a message from him saying, what's going to happen now? And then I started checking the news and whatnot. But till that point, it wasn't announced that obviously the leader had become shaheed. And then at night, we had gone out with some of the youth, and there was messages coming from obviously the news outlets outside of Iran. saying that he becomes Shaheed. And just like Sheikh Yasser mentioned as well, a lot of us denied it at first, and naturally so, because when you look at these news outlets, more often than not, they're spewing lies, and this is something that they've been doing for a long time now. If you look at the news and how many times they've said that he's become martyred, it's more than 10 times at least. So up until that point, it wasn't real for us, and we denied it, and we had a lot of yaqeen in it. But I remember it was in the morning at Fajr time when we woke up. Obviously, it was the month of Ramadan, so we'd woken up to have sehri, and my wife and my daughter had woken up, and we were having sehri, and that's when the message came, just before Fajr. And it was a shocker, obviously. All of us were in shock. We were in tears. I sat down just like Sheikh Yasser. I didn't know what to do. My heart was pacing. But it was very beautiful what happened after that, because as soon as we prayed Fajr, there were messages about how everyone was going to gather in the Haram. So obviously I prayed namaz and went to the Haram, and it was about 6 in the morning, and there was a different feeling in the environment. People were on the ground crying, weeping. There was sorrow everywhere, and it kind of weirdly helped to come to acceptance, and seeing all of these people wearing black with flags with his pictures and coming out from that very moment. So in that sense, we're in the Haram, and people are showing their love, and they're expressing their love for him and chanting slogans for him. And I think this is sort of the catalyst that has set off the events that we've been seeing now. I'm sure a lot of our audience are following as well what's happening in Iran for the last 32 nights. People coming out in the streets in the numbers, expressing their love and their affection for the Islamic Republic and for the leader. Ahsant.
So
the thing is, I was in i'tikaf as well at that time, so I couldn't even go to my hotel. So I was in the masjid, and like I said, a lot of people weren't getting it. I felt really lonely. There's nowhere to go. You're just there. You realize something great has happened, something major has happened, but around you, you feel like people are not getting it, right?
They didn't feel that it was them.
They didn't feel it was. I feel they didn't feel much, right? It was like, oh no, but it wasn't like, it didn't hurt. For me, it hurt. Like, you don't go in shock just like that. It really has to be strong for you. And people were saying condolences to me as if it was relevant for me and not for them.
Were you responding with the condolences as well?
So I would tell them condolences to all of you, to all of you in the whole ummah. It's not related to me. And then at night, when the Sayyid, because there was a Sayyid at the same time who was also from Qom, when he came, and we saw each other and we hugged each other, and that's where all the emotions came out. And at that time, it was like literally, that's when you felt like, okay, there's another heart that feels that emotion. We were just, we both like broke in tears, hugging each other, and it was a lot of emotion. And the thing and the reason I feel that this episode is really important, that the discussion we want to talk about, is because people are not feeling it the same way. And it feels like this is something to do either with people in Iran, or it's to do with scholars. Like, this is a regime of the mullahs, and the biggest mullah has been killed, so now we feel bad about it.
Or it's a nationalistic thing, and the Iranian flag mainly comes out.
Exactly, yeah.
But coming back to, before we just start the discussion, so I was in Birmingham, right? You're right. Many perhaps felt at a distance from this. Obviously, it's a marja, they felt sad, but not the way you talk about, like the way we were broken, right? But I still came across a lot of people, you'd be surprised, and across various communities. Obviously, we went to the Iranian community was shattered, right? They would just come to hug you and just like burst in tears. But even with other, like there were some Pakistani brothers, for example, some Khoja brothers, some people from Iraq, for example, that I met. And they too felt it like this. So they felt it like it was an attack on me. It was an attack on what I believe, on my system, on my values, on my ideology, basically. So I think there is both. There are people outside.
There's definitely people out there. Like when I say this, I'm generalizing it at a general social level. Obviously, there are many individuals out there who do have an understanding, who did feel strongly about it. And that was there. I'm not denying that at all. There's a lot of people out there, but I feel as communities and societies living outside, this war and these events seem to be a bit far from them, far from their lives. It's not impacting their lives too much.
So basically, it's like watching news, right? When you watch the news, you're watching news from a distance. Okay, so there's conflict happening across other countries. I remember when Ukraine war happened, for example, it felt a bit, for people in Europe, in England, it felt a bit home, right? But still, it was like at a distance. And watching the Russia attack Ukraine, for example, or Sudan, for example, at a distance. Over here, the question we want to ask is this the same way? Is it Iran and what's happening in the region right now? Something that we watch at a distance, something that we feel like, we feel sad about it, obviously, because perhaps they're Muslim brothers, perhaps they're things that we feel frustrated about, or maybe even it affects the petrol price at home, right? It's going to pinch economically across the world. So you feel a bit in that sense, but nothing more than that. So how would you explain this, what's happening, in a way that you can say, is it really a war that I should feel involved?
I think it's at different level, it concerns everybody. So if you look at it from just a purely human level, right? It should affect, it should touch every single soul, because there are crimes that are being committed. So it's a war that was unprovoked, right? It was based on lies. I think literally history is repeating itself. The same pattern of lies that were given before the Iraq war in 2001. Was it 2001, 2003? 2001, yeah. Before that war happened, there was a very strong movement of series of lies and a lot of pressure for the war to get started. We saw that exactly the same thing happening. All of a sudden, few weeks before, you start having this rhetoric about, Iran's this close to making nuclear weapons. We've heard that for 20 years, but this was now pushing a lot for it.
Correct, but Sheikh Yasser, we didn't feel this involved when it happened in Iraq. Not you make it at a human level. We didn't feel the same way, for example, for Myanmar.
I would disagree. One reason why I didn't feel it, because 2003 I was like a kid. I was still like, I was in Batil at that time, right? So for us it was very young, but I still remember the videos of the protests that were happening in the US against the war, no war. Right? Those protests were massive protests, right? So at a human level, just like at that time, I think at this time people are outraged, and what's happening right now in front of the cameras is that there's an unprovoked war against a country, a sovereign country, against a solid system. This is not a dictatorship. There's a constitution. There's a proper system that's working, and you have this attack that's going on. And the first attack was on a religious leader who is a scholar, not just a political leader. On top of that, the school was attacked with 170 students in that were killed. Since then, you have over 200 schools that have been bombed. You have many hospitals that have been bombed.
The stats right now are saying even more than that.
I'm saying, I'm trying to go so minimum in statistics just to say that, because if I say a higher number, then it's not, then I'll be like, you're saying you're exaggerating. I'm trying to go like the minimum, numbers.
I think apart from that as well, if you were to consider the events that have taken place in the last 3 years or so, since the genocide that began in Gaza, there's more of an awareness in people. People have started waking up to understand that this isn't just, one or two countries or three countries that are fighting. This is more of a fight of Haqq against Batil.
That's exactly what I come to see, because you mentioned the human perspective,
Haqq and against Batil will come when we speak about the high levels. But at a human level, put Haqq and Batil, which are concepts. At a human level, you're saying that it's a humanitarian thing. You have a country attacking another country for no reason, and it's not only attacking its military and political system. It's attacking the civilians themselves. It's attacking children. It's attacking hospitals, so sick people. It's attacking like every single historical sites have been attacked.
And we feel the same way for other countries. For example, take Sudan, for example, take Congo,
at this level, we do feel for all other countries.
Yeah, but there is more to this right now.
Right. So the reason we feel more for Iran is there is more to it. That's why. So we feel the same at a humanitarian level. We feel the same for every country. If I see videos of what's happening, for example, in Sudan, what's happening in other countries, honestly, my own heart personally will feel as bad. I don't separate. For me, it doesn't make a difference if it's a white kid or a black kid, if it's Iranian kid.
So there's a shooting in America, for example, right now, where young kids are killed.
The same thing happens. I really feel bad about it. I pray for the Madhulumin. We normally in these times, us as Shi'as, when we see these things happen anywhere in the world, our hearts should straight turn towards Sahib al-Zaman and ask Allah, when is Imam going to return, that these zulms stop happening. Even the zulm that's happening in the US itself, with the school shootings and innocent people being killed, the whole ICE thing that's happening right now. Our hearts are really hurting for the pain that innocent people around the world are suffering, right? So at a humanitarian level, I think it's all the same. All of these are equal. But there's another level as well for us as Shias that this is so important, is because And I'll put it this way now, you can nuance it or you can even disagree with it. But Iran right now, when it comes to the fight against oppression, and in terms of lifting the flag of Islamic values, right? Islam has taken the lead in that. I'm just going to clarify this for those of you who are listening. And by the way, if you guys have questions or if you guys disagree with this, please do give your input. But right now, today, what we see is that Iran is not a perfect country. The Islamic government is not a perfect Islamic government. But it is the country that has taken the lead and the step to try and make it as Islamic as possible. Unlike other, for example, countries that are calling themselves Islamic countries, but they're Muslim countries. They're countries that are populated by Muslims, but the systems are not based on a solid Islamic
what does
system.
that mean? What does that come back to what Shaykh said? What does that mean that it's Islamic values that they're trying to defend?
Okay, so I think if you paid attention to what Sheikh Yasser was talking about as well, if you can root it back to this idea of fighting against oppression, right? That there is one country or one Islamic Republic in this case, which is standing up for values which are godly values, right? These are not just humanitarian values. These are godly values that obviously you see very clearly, right? And this is something that they've been standing for throughout their history, throughout the 40 years.
At their expense as well.
At their expense as well. And this comes with a price to pay, right? And in this case, the price was the shahadat of the leader, the martyrdom of the leader. But you see that, again, this is something that, like I alluded to earlier, is not just one country fighting against another country. If you are to zoom into it and try and analyze it, you'll see that this is a fight of Haqq against Batil. And if you look at the Quran speaks about this very clearly, right? So, for example, the ayat that speak about not mixing truth with falsehood, it very clearly defines that there's two paths. There's one path of falsehood and there's one path of truth. And these two don't come together. They're always in opposition to one another. So throughout the 40 years, if you're to look at the events that have transpired in this region since the Islamic Republic was formed, it's always the case of Batil cannot stand against this truth, right? And now you can see it more clear than ever before. Again, if you look into Natural Balagha as well, Amir al-Mu'mineen alludes to this as well, where he says, كُونُوا لِلظَّالِمِ خَصْمًا وَلِلْمَظْلُومِ عَوْنًا. And you see the Islamic Republic embodying these values of justice, of human, of takrim of the human, of ikram of the human, human values, for example. And these are things that the enemies of Islam cannot fathom. They can't stand this, right? So again, you see that throughout history, these people have attacked this region. Every time that any country around here has been attacked, you see that Iran has come to the forefront to try and help them. Be it Yemen, be it in Iraq, be it in other places, be it in Gaza in the last 3 years. Iran was, as Sheikh Yasser pointed out as well, at the forefront carrying that flag. And now in the world there's an awakening. People are starting to realize that this isn't just one or two countries fighting each other. This is a country that's standing for values, Islamic values. Yeah.
Can we limit the Islamic values to just fighting oppression? Is it correct to say that? I'm guessing you're not just limiting to that, but maybe Shaykh Midad can expand on this. When we say that Iran is trying to establish Islamic values and fighting for Islamic values, is it just limited to this fighting oppression, or is there more to that?
I think it's a very important question, and how you answer is this. When you go back to Tawhid and Rububiyyah, right? You said, look, the way Allah wants society to be governed is that it should lead towards Tawheed. What does that mean practically? And we learned this in Madrasa, that Allah is one, etc. But that practically, that means that Allah is the authority. I don't submit to anything other than Allah. He is the Rabb. You find that the Batil or the Fir'aun, for example, comes and says that I will be your Lord. Ana rabbukum al-a'la. What does this Fir'aun do? He says, look, I will decide how resources are spent. I will decide how you will start thinking as a society. I will decide how we will run and govern societies. And you find that today's Fir'aun is like this, right? Trump says, I will take over resources. Venezuela today is mine, Cuba tomorrow is mine, this other country is mine. And I will spread resources the way I want it to be. And I will ensure that the ideology that I want to be spread in the world, right? The way you understand reality goes back in my hands. I control media, I control education. And then what? What happens that people then become enslaved in this, right? There's no way out. Today you want to, for example, you want to do business out of a system that doesn't have interest in it. You can't. You're stuck and enslaved in paying your mortgage, in doing business in an economic system that is creating a gap between the poor and the rich that's based on interest, etc. So you're enslaved by the system that claims that I will decide, and it's a rab, right? On the other side, the only nation today that stands against this. In fact, the Shaheed has this clip. It's very beautiful, where he says, you know what's the source and the reason why America hates us? Chun ma guftim na, because we said no. Trump comes and says, I will decide upon you, I will control your resources, I will decide how you think. And Iran says, no, sorry, we have a Lord. Our Lord is Allah. And therefore, what that happens, that makes this an ideology. It's not limited to a country anymore. It now becomes an ideology, fighting for independence, for freedom, in the sense that, look, only Allah will have authority over us.
I think you've mentioned something that raises a question. Before I go to that, I just want to comment on something. That, Trump, in one way, is a big blessing for us, because Trump has actually come out and made apparent the reality and exposed the reality of what the US and some of these Western governments represent, right?
Yeah.
This has been there for many, many years. It's nothing new, for decades. And yet, as Muslims, we've never been able to see through that. And so a lot of Muslims have been, and a lot of people have been very obsessed with the West and saying that's where freedom is. Whereas the West has been controlling all of this, and they entrap you in their system, right? Yeah. Trump has come out and he's basically exposed all of those dirty strategies and dirty politics and the dirty mindsets of this American dream sort of thing that represents this
mask
whole
has
system,
been lifted,
right?
basically.
The mask has been.
It's always been the same.
Yeah, and
people.
he's done that.
Yeah.
And to say that the mask was lifted and that's the face shows a lot. So this is a big blessing. And I was speaking the other day with somebody. I was saying that, when we read in the Quran, somebody like Fir'aun saying, Ana rabbukum al-a'la. Sometimes you think, what's going on in the mind of a person that thinks himself to be a Lord? We're getting to see that live every day. We see the tweets, we see the videos, we see Fir'aun speak, we see that idea of Ana Rabbukum al-A'la, I'm your greatest Lord, express itself. It's amazing. It's like it's a blessing. We're getting to see the Quranic taghut play out in front of us today. That's like probably not seen before.
What you've pointed out is very true. And on the one side, we spoke about Iran being a nation that is standing for Islamic values. On the other side, it doesn't take much to look into history and how much America, for example, and the carnage and the war and the deaths and the damage that it's caused throughout the world, right? So if you were to, I was looking this up, it's very interesting. If you were to look from the 19th century onwards, America has actively partaken in over 15 different wars, right? Actively, indirectly in its own place, but actively and directly in 15 different wars. Killing, and these are their stats, not our stats, more than 15 million people. That's not a joke. If you think about just Gaza in the last 3 years, 70,000 plus people being martyred, and it hurts us and pains us. Think about that number. 15 million people have been directly killed because of this evil that's come out from this istikbar in this country that thinks, as Sheikh Mithad said, can come into a country, for example, and kidnap their president in one day and steal their oil and very clearly speak it out as well. These are what they stand for.
And now they're saying for Iran as well that we want their oil. It's like they keep exposing that.
And we're not even entering like the Epstein files and all of the dirt and the filth that comes there. Leave that aside. These are apparent things that they've been doing for the last 2 centuries. Is it not?
So the key that you mentioned, come back to what you said, that it's important for us to understand that this is a movement, right? It's not just a person. So yes, we're making Trump, but Trump is just exposing what a movement is. And this movement is based on this shirk. It's based on this fact that there is a fight against Tawhid, right? That we don't want the authority of Allah. We'll do what we want to do, right? And this is where the fahsha and the evilness comes. On the other side, it's important. This is where we come and say, look, this is not about nations, right? This is not about a flag. This is not about culture.
Before we go to that, though, you made a very big claim. You said it's the only country that is upholding these Tawhidi values. You've disregarded the efforts of the neighboring countries around that are also claiming to be Islamic countries.
The United Arab Emirates, for example, and Saudi.
So you have the UAE, you have Saudi. They are, to a certain extent, implementing Islamic Sharia laws.
In what way? In what way are they standing and manifesting rububiyyah of Allah and Tawhid of Allah? Rather, they're actually kind of enslaved by this movement, right? You've seen how Trump these days talks about them, how insulting it is, right? a free man. You know, Imam Ali says that we created, Imam Ali says that mankind was created free, right? In the sense of what? In the sense that you should not be enslaved by people. Right? You should not be coming to it when your izzah goes down to this level.
So basically, the point is that when we claim to be an Islamic country or that we're trying to implement Islamic values, it's not just about implementing Sharia law.
No, it's
right?
not.
It's about a lot of other values as well. For example, there's this beautiful hadith, al-Islam ya'alu wa la yu'ala alayh, right?
Yeah.
That Islam is the one that has to be on top, right? You don't let anybody dominate over Islam. The fact that all these countries are completely submissive to these powers, and we have the verse of the Quran, don't take, for example, the enemies of Allah as your awliya, don't go under their authority. There's no problem in dealing and negotiating and working with people, but don't come under their authority. These are important Islamic concepts. One thing though, and this is where I want to come back to the Shaheed, is that one of the things that show that represents the values of a country, of a movement, is their leader. So today Trump is representing the American movement, and on our side the person that was representing the Islamic movement was Sayyid Shaheed Ayatollah Khamenei, right? And I think it's really one of the things that has been lacking, perhaps a fault of ours, is that people don't know who this person is.
Yeah.
So when Ayatollah Khamenei became Shaheed and people presented their condolences to me and I started speaking to people, I realized how much they don't know about him. So how can they feel bad about a person that they don't know about?
Yeah.
We know about him even to the details of, for example, how he treated children. We would watch videos of him going to the book exhibitions and him being aware of like nearly every book that's been published and sometimes even read them already.
Or planting trees every year.
Planting trees every year, and the way he treats, for example, his idea about, for example, women, his idea about freedom of speech, his idea about hijab. How he talks about
personality.
The all-rounded personality. He's such an amazing personality, and he really represents all these Islamic values.
Right.
So when you say that the Islamic Republic is the only country that does that, I would say that one of the things that shows is their leader.
Yeah.
The leader of, like I said, Khamenei, in terms of how he embodies Islamic values, is very different from the others. We've already seen the Crown Prince being part of the Epstein files, so that's gone. And we know a lot of the other leaders do not embody Islam the way he did.
Just on this point, I'd really recommend our viewers, if they can, to go back and look at his speeches. There's one thing that you take the narrative, because as you were saying, this is about the Battle of Narratives. There's one thing where you take the narrative from the enemies and what they say about him, now just from the media, and now just go look at his speeches and the things that he spoke about. It's beautiful. It doesn't take so much to see.
More than the speeches, I would say his meetings with the people. His meeting, for example, there is an old video of when he went to meet the family of Christian Shaheeds.
Right.
And then he has meetings with, for example, every year he meets the girls who become baligh, so in Jash Taklif. And then he has meetings with the families of the Shuhada. He has meetings with war veterans. The way he embraces people, he kisses them. It's a Iranian culture to kiss, and the way he shows that love. When we watch these videos, and maybe I don't know, the media can help us in that. Maybe select some of these videos and put them.
We'll have
here.
a battle of narratives about the Shaheed as well. To discuss more about him and who he was. There's a lot of questions that people have as well. We're talking about it like this, but many people have questions about what he did. Some things are perhaps questionable, etc. So we will come back to this. But I want to come back to this idea because, see, the question that we started with is a very important question, okay? Is that today, look, you've been going out every night pretty much, and you've been going out every night. I've been going as well. What flag do you raise? The Iranian flag, right? We raise the Iranian flag. Why? This is an important question. We want to explain that, look, whilst this is a nation, this is an Iranian flag, okay? But we want to put across that, and we want to make everyone feel that, look, and understand, not just feel, but also understand and rationalize that this is not just about a particular nation. This is about a battle of ideology. And we stand on the ideology of Haqq. And this one goes back all the way to Tawhid. And so, when you zoom into oppression, the both of you have mentioned, right? The standing against oppression. This in Islam is fundamental. Why? Because it goes back to Tawhid. I'll give you another example. So I mentioned that the Rububiyyah, for example, that we accept only the authority of Allah. And the Batil wants to take everyone and enslave and take them under their own authority. They want to control resources, they want to control the way we think, etc. I'll give you another example. In the Quran, one of the things that Allah talks about the let's say, the roles and the responsibility of the Prophet, right? This is in Surah A'raf 157, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that the things that the Prophet does is what? يَضَعُ عَنْهُمْ إِصْرَهُمْ وَأَغْلَالَ الَّتِي كَانَتْ عَلَيْهِمْ. Ghil is chains, right? It's that which enslaves you, that which chains you. The role of the Prophet, like if you say, okay, why did the Prophet come? What was the role of the Prophet? One of the important roles of the Prophet is to break those chains. It's to make people free. Now, what does freedom mean? It's a very loaded term today, right? Freedom in Islam is when you break those shackles that attach you to this world or that enslave you to other people, and you free them as a nation, as individuals, to go back towards Allah, to the rububiyyat of Allah. And that you see that's happening with the Shaheed and the movement today. This ideology is about freeing people. And that's why I like the fact that you introduced as the man who freed the world, or the leader of the free world, right? Why do we use this freedom? Is because it's not just Iran that's talking about its own resources, its own kind of people. It's about an ideology that wants to free people from the authority that is Taghut, the authority that wants to say, everything's mine, I am the Lord, and bring them towards what? Towards Tawheed.
The only issue with using these terms, and I want to clarify that, is when you say things like ideology and things like that, there's a lot of people who be like, okay, this is you mullahs fighting, so you guys go and fight. Leave us Iranian people who just want to have a nice life, live us alone.
I take my mum out.
And the point over here is that this is a fight based on Islamic values, but for humanity, to free human beings, right? Allah sent a messenger in order to free human beings from these taghuts. I think a lot of people forget and don't realize that this whole system of oppressors are, yes, they are giving certain level of entertainment and pleasure, worldly pleasures, but in reality a lot of people are just enslaved in the system. They don't have the real freedom, right? As soon as they want to stand up for a certain basic human value, they're straight away shut down. What kind of freedom is that? Right? So it's true that we are fighting based on Islamic morals and Islamic values and from Islamic perspective, but it's a fight for humanity, for the freedom of humanity. It's a fight to help the innocent oppressed people around the world, right? Because it's true that the war is happening over here, but the people who are perpetrating this war are the same people who are oppressing South American countries. They're the same people who are, for example, right now putting pressure on European countries. If right now the European economy is down, a lot of it comes back to the same system that's trying to dominate everything. If today, for example, the Gulf countries are suffering, is because they dependent on that. So they need to open their eyes and realize that when you depend on this kind of kafir enemy of Islam, then this was going to happen. It's the same superpower that's been, hurting and creating fitna and wars in different parts of the world to control everything. So when the war is happening in a particular region, but the ones perpetrating the war are actually destroying the entire humanity and globe in different ways. So we're actually going to the root cause and destroying it from the root cause, whilst it was planting, seeds of discord everywhere. So it's a fight on behalf of everybody.
If you were to look at what Iran's been doing, it's very interesting as well. The missiles that they've been sending, the messages that are on it as well, they show that this is not a fight of two countries. For example, there's messages that this is for the victims of the Epstein Island, or for example, this is for the victims of this place that was attacked by America, showing that we're standing for the oppressed all around the world. And this comes from the Quranic principle as well. What's interesting is that if you were to look into history, after the colonial era, right? If you look at the world and just, from the outside, you'd see that the world was split into two parts. So there's one side of countries that were the dominating powers, and on the other side, there's these submissive countries that unfortunately, because they didn't have the power to speak up, they didn't have the right ideology and mentality, they didn't have the unity or whatever other factors you want to take into consideration.
They were inclined towards the world and money and...
Right, yeah. So these are the two sides that you see that sort of took shape after colonialism ended. And colonialism isn't over. You're seeing it even now, right? It's just taken a different shape. But during that time, when the Islamic Republic was formed, and if you look at its values and what it stands for, it said exactly this. We aren't going to be a dominating nation. We're not going to come and impose on other countries and steal your, for example, oil and whatnot. On the other side, we're not going to agree to be dominated either. Right? These are coming from Quranic principles. And for example, when the Quran says, "Udhina lilladhina أذن للذين يقاتلون بأنهم ظلموا. The permission has been given to those to fight in the way of Allah, those who are oppressed. Right? So this is coming from Quranic principles again, the stance that Iran takes.
So this war is being fought on behalf of every other country, right? Yeah. It's not our war, it's everybody's war.
Everybody should feel part of it.
Everybody should feel part of it.
This is exactly what we're going to come across. The conclusion today is this, that wherever we are, right, either East Africa, India, Australia, Canada, Europe, wherever we're sitting, right, there is an understanding that we need to create that this is something that is impacting me, and I should feel involved in this. I should feel part of this. And very important is that there is only two camps. There is no third way, right? Unless you're like Abu Musa Ash'ari and say, look, I don't want to get involved in this, right? And then the curse of inns and jinns come on you. In fact, we have in Hadith, Amir al-Mu'minin would curse 3 people in his qunut. And one of them was Abu Musa Ash'ari. Those who stayed like, I've got nothing to do with this, right? Not realizing that I've got nothing to do with this, it actually puts you in the side of the batil, right? Because you're not doing what the Quran instructs us to do, right? To stand with Allah, to be in the party of those who are fighting on the way of Allah, those who are under oppression, etc. So,
and what's also very interesting is that today the way the war is shaped is that standing on the side of Haqq for most people around the world is not even difficult. It doesn't even cost anything. It's just your heart and your mind has to be towards it. Minimum, because look, we don't need people to fight on ground. Alhamdulillah, the Islamic Revolution has been working on that. They have their people fighting. Yeah. So the people actually doing the fighting on ground on our behalf is already being done.
Yeah.
There is no cost in this. Like, turn your heart towards, try to understand what's going on, make your heart feel what's going on. And if you're able to contribute, and maybe this is an important discussion, how can we contribute once we feel for it?
That.
But the minimum we need to do is actually feel part of it. We can't think about what to do if we haven't first invested our hearts and our tears into this, right? Yeah. The least we can do is, think about it and cry for it. So mourn for what's going on, mourn for the innocent lives, mourn for the marja. This is what I was really, really surprised that, a marja taqlid of the Shias was killed. Yes, he was a political leader, but he was also one of the approved maraja, right? Oh, but he is not my marja. It's not about my marja. It's a marja of the Shias.
It's an institution that was attacked.
It's an institution that was attacked. We have dozens of maraja who are announced as marjas. Yeah. Any one of them gets hurt, we should all as Shias feel hurt. Yeah. Not just if the one I do taqlid of, right? That's just for fiqh purposes that we choose one marja to taqlid of. But if any of our senior scholars is being hit, that should affect all of us.
Yeah. I want to add more points because really I think this is so important because see the thing you talk about, the emotional investment and everything needs to come from an understanding as well. I'll give another example why this aspect of Tawheed and this aspect of standing against oppression is so important. Because some people might ask as a question, so, okay, but what about the different challenges that we have today? We have issues with child upbringing, we have issues with alcohol, with drugs, with community affairs, divorce rates are going high. Like, well, why can't we just focus on these things? Why are you talking about such grand issues, right? And I want to say this is how the Quran introduces the prophets as well, right? When the Quran says what the Prophet came, we're talking about the establishment of justice. We're talking about the establishment and the giving direction to the nation towards the Tawheed, right? And Tawheed reflected as a nation, as an ummah, is when we accept the authority of Allah, right? Like if you take Amir al-Mu'minin and his Khilafah, for example, it's very beautiful. Amir al-Mu'minin takes up the Khilafah and there's loads of different issues that are happening within the community, right? Within the society. But what does he put priority towards? Muawiyah. Right? Because that is an entity that is directing the society away from the rububiyyah.
It's the source of the fitna.
Exactly.
So it's taking people away from all of that in that mass scale, basically.
Exactly. Many people would have come to the Imam and said, look, can we just give him Syria? Let him deal with Syria. Okay, we'll deal with our own child. We have got economy issues over here, schooling issue over here, justice system, whatever. Why can't we just focus on this? And he was like, no. That's the main issue right now, right? The main issue for an entire nation and the people within this nation, that us as Muslims, we feel like this, is the fact that we reject Batil, right? That we stand with Haqq and reject Batil. Standing with Haqq means what? That we take Allah as the Rabb, that we direct our attention towards taking only Allah as the one who is going to manage our affairs. It means that we're going to be freeing ourselves from the slavery that the Batil is trying to make us under, right? And this is, I think, when you understand like this, you feel like, okay, hold on a second. This is actually my war. This is actually, I feel now part of this. I feel like grateful for everything that the Shaheed did, right? Like the fact that he, something beautiful, I'm going to be talking about him, something beautiful, something mentioned to me recently about him, was that in 40 years, the struggle that he went through for this movement, it's not easy, right? Amir al-Mu'mineen would cry tears. 40 years he struggled on this. And then whenever there was success, it was either Imam Khomeini's work or Mardum in Karakat, and the people did this. When did you hear him say that, I did this strategy, I did this planning, I had these meetings? Never. It was always about Imam Khomeini's work, that's what worked over here, or it was the people came on in the forefront, they managed to overcome the difficulties. And that is true Tawheed, right? That he understands that over here we're connecting towards Allah. We are taking this nation towards the zuhur, towards the establishment of justice. This is a movement, an ideology, and it's a caravan that all of us, wherever we are geographically, right, we count it in this as well. And we have to be counted that. Otherwise, where do we stand otherwise? This is Haqq, right? This is the movement towards Tawheed.
And I think if you mentioned his personality, if you were to look at him, I think something that you find very clear in him is that he was an embodiment of what the Quran explains to be as a leader, right? So for example, if you look at the ayah that speaks about the Holy Prophet, he says, أَشِدَّاءُ عَلَى الْكُفَّارِ رُحَمَاءُ بَيْنَهُم. So Sheikh Yasir spoke about this as well, how he was with the children with a lot of love and care. But when it came against the istikbar, these superior powers, he stood firm. And what's interesting is that even these media outlets that try to portray a very bad image of Iran and whatnot, they can't find a single black dot in his life, right? So if they're trying to look at his personal life, they can't. Whereas if you're to compare him to the leaders of the world, the istikbar, how they live their lives, right? We alluded to the Epstein Island and all of the things, the people who are complicit in that. It's not even a comparison. It's shameful to even bring these two people in the same sentence, right? He lived a godly life, right? Up until the end of his life, there's stories about how, there was a story that I'd read where, for example, that they used to have carpets in their house, and at a certain point he told his people to sell these carpets off and give it to the students of the Hawza who were in need of it. And there was one carpet that was left in the house that actually his wife owned. It was hers from before. And when his wife comes home, and this is just to show how this whole family was living by godly principles. So his wife came home and sees the carpet, and she says that, why is this still here? And he says, well, this belongs to you, I can't sell it. And she says, no, sell it off as well. And at that point, they bought like a small, not a rug, like a cloth that they would put on the floor. And up until the end of his life, they used that same cloth. So you see that he lived a life of godly principles as well. But just coming back to the point of istikbar, right? So a lot of people say this, for example, that, again, going back to the point of this is just two countries that are fighting, right? These slogans that you see in Iran, that after every namaz, people shout and say things like Mark Bar America, or, death upon America. Someone might feel that this is to do with just these two countries. This is something that these two countries, or put Israel in as well. It's two countries against one, right? This is the battle. Well, the Shaheed himself clarifies this very clearly, that we don't have a problem with the people of America. Again, it goes back to that point that we have the problem with the government that's in place that brings about this istikbar, that brings about this dhulm, and that's spreading this dhulm around the world. So it's just something to keep in mind, that this istikbar is something that the Quran again very clearly speaks up against. When you look at, for example, the ayat that speaks about when Allah commanded the angels to prostrate, Shaitan was sidelined because of what? Aba wastakbara. It was his istikbar. It goes back to this arrogance and this feeling that I can do whatever I want, whenever I want. I can trample on the rights of, be it godly rights, or in this case, the countries that are fighting in Iran, human rights. Right? We spoke about how much damage they've caused and how many people have been killed because of this.
Yeah. And the Taghut is like this, right? The Quran, if you just do a quick search in the Quran about Taghut and about the enemy, you find that the ideology that Islam puts forward is that, look, the world is like this. This is how the world has been created. There will be two parties. There will be the party of Haqq and the party of Taghut. And there are people who will be standing as a Taghut who will say, look, I want to be the Lord. Ana rabbukum al-a'la. I want to control. And there will be others who will abad al-Taghut. They will worship the Taghut. In other words, they'll be enslaved by this. And today you find, right, If you look at the Gulf countries, for example, their leaders, not the people, their leaders, how they're enslaved, right? And many of us in our lives, wherever we are around the world, we start kind of gaining from the system in such a way that we can't come out of it. We're trapped in the system. You know, how many people have come to you? All three of us have gone for tabligh, right? People complain to a sheikh, like, my youth, for example, all going astray because of the schooling, because of the media, because of what they watch on TV, right? You feel entrapped in this society that controls the mind of our youth, that controls the way we think, right? That pushes us towards desires, pushes us towards away from God, pushes us towards thinking that we're independent from Allah, right? This is a whole system, right? This entire system now is being fought by Haqq. It's being fought by this ideology that's like, no, sorry.
I think people underestimate the relevance and the impact that political systems have in their own personal lives. You know, a lot of time, like you said, our youths are going astray. We are so into our daily lives, our entertainment, and, you know, busy with earning money, that we forget the fact that the whole entertainment industry, the whole economic system, the healthcare, all of these things, and how it's functioning, how my life is just, you know, a rat race, and how there's a lot of corruption in the media, there's a lot of, the entertainment today is not suitable for my children, their tarbiyah is spoiled. A lot of this, if not all of this, is sourced by the political system. It's driven, it's directed by the political system. If the political system is corrupt, then it's going to trickle down to all of these things. And so today, when there's a political system, two political system fightings, it's not two political systems, it's two mindsets, two worldviews, two ideologies that are fighting, right? So it's not about the American government fighting the Iranian government. It's the Iranian nation fighting this political system that is attacking it, right? It's defending itself in the fight, right? So again, one of the reasons why people around the world have to realize that this is relevant for them is because everything that their life is all about, the economy, the entertainment, all of that is actually being determined by these superpowers and the political elite that right now is involved in this fight.
That count themselves as a Rabb away from Allah.
Exactly.
Other than Allah. Okay, so I think
yeah. So
your last point you want to mention?
I wanted to say that there's still a lot more to talk about.
There's a lot we can talk about. I think, but the conclusion with all the different arguments, the verses, and I think it's a perspective, it's a narration, right? It's a narrative that we're trying to say that, look, this is what Islam talks about. That says that we have Haqq and Batil, and so today's battle is not like other battles, right? Today's battle is truly a battle where wherever we are across the world, we feel invested into this battle. We feel that, look, I stand on one side, which is the side of the Haqq. I stand on the side of those who are going to say that Allah is my Rabb, and freeing ourselves from those who are saying that they want to control everything, that they want to have the power of the world. And that is an important message for today.
And a concluding remark from my side is that we have to always realize that we are one ummah. Right? The moment we say this is the Iranians fighting and not me, is that I have pulled myself out of the ummah, right? Because the ummah is not about borders, it's not about races, it's not about languages. The ummah is about the fact that we are Muslims, we are Shias, we all belong to the same body. It doesn't matter where in the world I'm living. If a part of the body is hurt, the whole body is going to be in a bad state, right? You can't ignore. If you hit even your pinky on a table leg, it's going to hurt. You're not going to be like, okay, let's ignore that pain and continue working. The whole body is going to be focused on that, right? So you can't say that this is happening this side of the world. The Iranians are in this. It's nothing to do with me. It's not about Iranians. It's about Muslim Shias. It's about the people in a particular geographical location who've taken the flag and who are at the forefront of the battle. Geographically, they are the forefront. They are the ones who are fighting the battle. But the battle is relevant for all of us, right? This is the land of Shia Muslims, of Shias. This is the land of Imam Ridha, Bibi Masuma. It's a land of where a lot of 2 or 3 of the major Shia houses and academic centers are based here, right? Mashhad, Qom, Tehran, and other cities as well. So there's a lot of Islamic Shia heritage that is here, that is at stake, that is being attacked. Not attacked as a side thing. It is directly being attacked, right? It is because we are Shias and we uphold these values that the American system has an issue with with the Iranians. The Iranians themselves, there's Iranians living in Canada and the US who are pro this, right? So it's not because the Iranians are being attacked. They are being attacked because they're upholding these values, right? So we have to wake up to this and realize that this is a war against values, not just against a certain group of people.
And last word?
I think it goes back to what Sheikh Yasir was pointing towards, that we need to come out of this individualistic mindset that, it doesn't affect me. And only when, like you said, the petrol prices go up, when the grocery bills go up, that's when we need to come out of this mindset. And the second thing is we need to come out of this secular mindset, where, for example, I go to mosque and I pray and I did my Ramadan and I fasted and whatnot. And what's happening on the political arena has got nothing to do with me. It's got nothing to do with Islam. It's politics. Yeah, Islam has nothing to do with politics and these kind of things. This isn't the case. I mean, it's very clear that just look at Nahj al-Balagha and it's full of political insight about how Mu'min dealt with this person or this group and that group. And Islam is a holistic religion. You can't separate it and say, this is to do with me and that's got nothing to do with me. It's a way of life, like we say, right? So it's got to do with every part of your life. We need to wake up to this realization that it affects every single one of us.
So we talk about Ayatollah Khamenei, but there's questions about him, there's questions about recent events in January and how he happens to have dealt with them, the number of killings that happened, and so on. There's questions about, for example, could we not have managed this whole situation with a deal, choose peace over fighting? There's a lot of questions about, for example, why is the internet cut off? If we're really on Haqq, then what do we have to hide? Why not open up the internet? And there's a lot of questions about also, this that we need to discuss.
Directly as well is, now that we feel invested, what do we need to do?
What
is our responsibility now that we feel that, okay, I'm part of this party of Haqq? Okay, me sitting in Canada or in London, what do I do?
Okay, so inshallah all of this we'll discuss them in a separate session, okay? Maybe we can end this over here and keep these as questions for later, inshallah.
Sure. Should we just go through the crowd and see if there's anyone who had any questions, any points to add? Ahsan, does it answer our discussion circle? Yes? Because you were confused after that. Are you now back on light and on Haqq?
So when you mentioned about us having to feel the same for all the oppressed people around the world, will you just expand on that more? Because then you said, yes, there's a different level for the Shias, of course.
Yeah. So the reason I said so, at a humanitarian level, whatever there is oppression, we feel bad for it, right? Whoever it is, doesn't matter the race, the religion, none of that matters, right? Even this thing, I don't know about you guys, but I personally really don't like when they say, oh, women and children, what about the men, right? Why are you oppressing the men? Even the men have sensory, neurons. We feel pain as well. We don't differentiate between different human beings when it comes to their pain, their suffering, and their oppression, right? The reason I said we feel more invested in what's happening over here is for two more reasons. Number one is that Iran has taken the leadership in terms of leading the movement, right? So if you support strongly the leading power, then you're indirectly supporting the rest as well, right? We can have discussions and debates about what's happening in individual areas, but if we focus all of that in the leadership and we push that forward, then that indirectly solves everything else as well, right? Right now there is a superpower that is trying to control everybody. That's saying Ana Rabbukum al-A'la, is creating a mess all over the globe, right? Rather than focusing on each and every one of them individually, you have Iran that's come and said, I'm going to fight it at its roots, right? So by supporting this and by investing ourselves in this, we are actually indirectly helping the rest. And the third thing is that, look, as human beings, we value things in a hierarchy, right? We have the basic human values, but we also hold dear values that are even more important, the value of taqwa, the value of iman. So those who are Muslims, and on top of that Shia Muslims as well, are closer to us naturally. Naturally, somebody who's in my family who's killed, it's going to hurt me more than somebody who's far from me. Not because they're less of a human beings or they have less sensory neurons. It's because naturally the heart is affected more by those who are close to you. Now, our closest is not just a physical, blood relative sort of thing. Right? It's about wilaya. It's about our connection and our relationship with people based on values at the basic level, human values, then you have Muslim values, and you have the Shia values, the fact that we are Shia, brother in faith, right? إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةً. We're all brothers. We have a special connection that we don't have with everybody around the world. We will fight for everybody around the world. Every oppressed person will fight for them. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, if a Jewish old lady in your under your authority is killed oppressively, and you die out of sorrow for that, you're excused. You're justified. Right? So we will fight for everybody. But naturally, when we feel something, we'll feel a lot more for those who are closer to us.
What is the criteria to identify who is winning the war? Because on one side, like we can see Iran are taking all the bases and everything. On the other side, we see Trump claiming that he is winning the war. So what's happening?
That's exactly the topic for the next discussion, inshallah.
Yes.
Spot on.
I had the point you mentioned about how the world is created, that there is two parts. The part of Haqq and part of Batil. Maybe from here I can say that these are just the names that we have been given, that this part is for Haqq, this is for Batil. If it's like that, the system of creation that there are these two parts, so what's the problem of that? Because each one may follow on its own path.
Okay, so, and what happens about that?
So they've not been created to follow the path of Batil. These two paths exist. Imma Shakir and Imma Kafur, right? We have these two paths, but these two paths contradict each other. So if people decide to take the path of Batil, naturally the path of Batil and Haqq will fight and come head on. That's a natural reality on the ground, right? So you have people who are trying to uphold human values and other people who are trying to undermine human values. When that happens, then these two collide. You can't just say that, okay, the people who are on Batil, let them just follow their Batil. They've decided to take this path, let them take this path. It's like this path naturally goes against it. This is why in this kind of situation we're in, we can't be neutral, right? Neutrality doesn't make sense. It's literally two opposites are colliding right now, right? You have to be on one side or the other.
So the path of Batil is based on greed, for example, right? He wants to take over everything, including those things that belong to the part of Haqq. It's based on takabbur, it's based on istikbar. So he wants to rule over and have authority over and control over. You see all these traits that Fir'aun has? Exactly. He wants to enslave the Bani Israel. He wants to take over the resources. He wants to control. These are all aspects that naturally what will happen, he creates conflict. The people of Haqq feel in a battle against this.
I think what you said is very true. It's about what Batil brings about, right? It's not just, for example, there are two independent groups on one side. It's what Batil does. Batil will not allow Haqq to stay. Batil wants Haqq to go. On the other hand, Haqq doesn't want Batil to stay, because when you see Batil and what its effects are in the region right now, for example, just in the last 3 years in Gaza, like we said, 70,000 people were killed. This is Batil acting upon itself. It's showing itself. So it's not about just an independent group that's doing its own thing and we're doing our own thing. It comes head on against your values. So on the one hand, physical loss. On the other hand, it's trying to break your ideology, trying to break your systems and what you stand for, the truth that you stand for.
This concept of the enemy of your enemy is your friend, does it apply to Islam? In the sense that there are two examples. We find a country like Yemen, who might probably or are in the side of Haqq, and then there is another country who probably is the enemy of your enemy but is on the side of Batil. Can Iran make a good relationship and make this country who's on the side of Batil as his friend?
So see, you have to take it into consideration the current circumstance, right? Currently circumstance, the Batil's head, is America, right? The Batil's head is this istikbar that comes and expresses itself, and we see how it's expressing itself, right? Anyone that associates itself with this, anyone that becomes allies with this, will be part of this movement as well, right? Anyone who stands outside of it, right? For now, it's outside, right? Maybe in the future it might come with the Haqq, or it might turn into Batil as well. But for now, because it's out of the picture, right? It doesn't come into the battlefield of Haqq against Batil. So it can be ignored for now. The future might see things differently, right? The future might shape the political and the human society in a different way, and then a new head will come up, okay? Because that's how the world keeps on working, right? So, but for now, the current situation, we see, okay, we know clearly who stands on Haqq and who are the allies of Haqq, and who stands on Batil and who are those who are supporting Batil right now at this present moment.
And by the way, you don't have to be on Haqq necessarily to be helping the side of Haqq, right? So there are countries out there who are supporting the movement of Haqq, even though themselves, for example, in terms of the ideology, they're not necessarily Muslims, for example, but they are right now, for whatever reasons they have, they are supporting the Haqq. Right. Another point I had was about complicity. Just because, like Sheikh Mikdad said, because somebody is, for example, outside the battle right now, doesn't mean that they're not complicit in the crimes as well. So you may have certain countries that are decided that we want to be neutral. In reality, they're not neutral. The fact that they're silent means that they're also supporting the killings. If they are at least vocal about it, to that level they are supporting the Haqq. If they are actively contributing, at that level they're supporting the Haqq. So everybody in this battle is to a certain extent either supporting the Haqq or supporting the evil. Everybody is involved, right? Even Uganda. Right? Even Uganda, when they said, or whether it's one person or it's the whole country, I don't know. But when they said we are going to help, for example, a ground invasion in Tehran, they have decided to support the Batil, right? Other countries might be less vocal. Other countries might be more vocal. Other countries might not be vocal, but practically might be helping the side of Haqq without saying anything, right? So every country and every place around the world is basically to either on one side or the other at different levels. And the side of Haqq is happy to take help from anywhere. This is where the point of wilayah comes then, that it doesn't come under the authority of anybody. It's happy to work with people, it's happy to get help from other places, but it's not going to be dependent on other places. It's going to stand its ground, it's going to do what it needs to do, whether others help him or not. If others help it, alhamdulillah, it will take help, we'll all fight for humanity together. If nobody wants to help it, it will do its best within its own capacity.
So thank you very much for everyone for following us, inshallah. We hope that this is a important and useful and inspiring discussion that we've had, because it affects us, it's relevant, it's something that we can take home, reflect upon, and see its effect in us, just in the effect of it in our own spiritual growth, in our getting closer to Allah, because it's a discussion that goes back to the purpose of our creation. It goes back to who we are, our relation with Allah. It's not just something to do with on the side thing that happens on the news that you follow. And so inshallah, useful, beneficial, relevant. If you have any questions, please throw it on the comments, please send us messages. We will try to have more of these definitely, and stay tuned for more.